Good morning, traders. Welcome to today's market review. This is Fred Razak at CMTrading. Today is May 1st, 2019, and today is Wednesday morning. So looking at the economic events of the day, one really big event, but before we get to that event, 4 o'clock South African time out of the United States, ISM manufacturing PMI number coming out. That is an important number. So if there are any surprises, we may see some market activity there. Now, later in the day, in the evening at 8 o'clock South Africa time, FOMC Funds Rate, that is an interest rate decision from the Central Bank of the United States, the Fed, and that is a major number, okay? It's coming out at 8 o'clock again at South African time. It's going to be followed up with a press conference. And then later in the evening, and I do mention this just that you know that it is coming up, but it probably will, shadow in the news of the FOMC. Governor Polos will be speaking out of Canada at 10:15 South African time. So with these numbers coming out, just be aware that the major number is really coming out at 8 o'clock South African time. Now, looking at the market before we get started, Forex symbols, US dollar continues to slide versus the euro, the GBP, but the Turkish Lira and the Aussie dollar are weaker. So there's a mixed bag there. We'll take a look at that in just a moment and see what we can expect. Now, looking at indices, Dow Jones is back to yearly highs, 26,600-ish level. JSE bounces and the DAX continues to rally straight higher. So this is positive kind of news coming out in the general market, okay? But if we look at particular stocks, we do see some issues. Now, looking at the commodities, gold trades lower in the anticipation for this FOMC rate decision, and oil pairs its gains. So just be aware of that. Now, lastly, looking at the stocks, big numbers had come out this week, Apple and Google. Apple bears its gains after reporting. It actually rallied to $210 in aftermarket hours with increased revenue this morning. It's actually gapping down to $200 a share. That is an important event, especially if revenues actually are doing better. Why is the stock a little bit down? Google gapped down big yesterday, okay, after reporting its earnings, and that's really an important event. We're going to take a look at all of them and see what we can anticipate from today's trading. So we're looking here at the Euro USD and looking like we've bought at this 11.29 earlier in the week, late last week, okay? And we look like we've gone up to all the way to 12.26-ish level, and that is potentially a resist level, okay? Now, this is in anticipation of the FOMC meeting later today. So with that said, okay, when we look at this and we look at the GBP, which is even stronger than the Euro USD after bouncing yesterday, okay, my go-to for particularly if there's positive news out of the States, if interest rates are not going to be changed and inflation is in check, I would look to actually short this. Now, looking at the GBP USD, much stronger than the euro versus the dollar, okay? We broke that downwards trend line, which was at 129.74-ish level. We're trading at 130, which is above 150-ish level, which is really an important level to be above. However, it seems like we're treating the 130 level almost like lukewarm. Okay, so with that said, just be aware of that, but it is one of the stronger components versus the US dollar. However, when we look at the Aussie dollar, it's dead, okay? Really very weak here, still at the bottom of its rate. Some concern about some jobs cases in Australia. So with that said, just be aware of it. Now, looking at the Turkish Lira, we did continue our slide upwards here. Okay, the dollar getting stronger versus the Lira. Okay, it's the reverse here. So with that said, okay, if it doesn't break that 6 level, we may see that correction still happen. Okay, so the news is all happening at the same time. We have this major funds rate decision from the FOMC as we are on major thresholds. Okay, this is usually the case. Now, looking at gold and oil, let's take a look at gold trading down to 1278 again, but that's really our go-to. Okay, if we set up that support level right there, you can see that quite clearly. 1278 is your level, bouncing right off it between 1278 and 1286, and we're right smack almost in the middle of it. Okay, so with that said, nothing really surprising here, but if we do break this 1278 later today, we could see that correctionally finally happen down to the 1270-ish level. Now, looking at oil, we bounced, but then we paired the gains. Okay, 63.36. Okay, as we trade later today, kind of looking into the inventory numbers this week to see maybe, if things are fluctuating, okay? But pretty much, I think we've leveled off for now with our ascent we've had since December of 2018. Since that low, we've had this massive ascent, okay, with the price of oil from $42 to $66 a barrel. And it just looks like we're finally topping off there between on the lower end 61.85, on the higher end 66.43, and that's what I would anticipate to continue between. Now looking at that Dow Jones, we're smack at that resistance level. Look at that right there. That was our high back in April last week, okay, and we're challenging that high 26,688. Okay, so with that said, this is really an important level for it to break. I'd like to see that actually rate later today and see if that does come through. Okay, if it does push ahead higher. Now looking at the daily, we're still off about 300 points, 250 points from our all-time highs, which is, you know, a massive recovery since January, okay? But as the case is usually done, that these major thresholds are met while there's a major news event coming out. If it doesn't break above higher, we may see it retrace. And if it does retrace, it initially retraced down to 26,365, and our next support level is 26,138. Now, what's a little bit disconcerting is the FANG stocks, okay? Before we get to the FANG stocks, let's just look at the JSE. The JSE bounced off of support yesterday, 52,490. That was our level. We had mentioned that, and a nice little bounce off of it. Let's see what happens today if it does trade sideways, which I think it will in anticipation of the major news event. Now, looking at the DAX, just keeps on going higher. Okay, our next resistance level, 12,412-ish level. That is a major resistance level, so just be aware of it. Now, looking lastly at the FANG stocks, Apple, a big gap down yesterday, okay, but it did trade as high as 210 in after hours trading. You don't see it in the graph right now, but it did trade as high as that, and then finally settling around $200 a share. Now, it does need to sustain itself for us to be still bullish about it, okay, because the markets do have opportunities to change themselves, okay, and to reallocate assets, especially fund managers when they're doing that. Now, what's disconcerting is Google, okay? Look at that drop, 1282 down to 1182. That's a 100-point gap down in intraday trading, okay? It's still stable because if we think about it, this thing has gone from $1 over the past decade to over $1,000. Okay, so with that said, and just be aware of it, okay, because it may be making a double top here, but we may end up seeing is that it's going to be trading in a new trading range. Okay, so where are we now relative to where we were at the end of December? We're still about 200 points higher. Okay, so we've gained 300 points, we gave back 100 points, so we're a third back to where we were right before the debacle. Okay, so with that said, okay, honestly, I'd like to see a filling of the gap here, but we may see a gap and go. Okay, so with that said, just be careful if you are trading. Google is very violent and is massive kind of trades, and you do need to trade it with small amount of volume. This is Fred Razak, and we wish you guys a great trading day. Thank you.